This is a Guide Your Light network production, creating podcasts with purpose. Hello, I'm Maritza Barone. Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. Has there ever been a moment in your life where you heard, read, or were told something that you simply could not unhear? Something that made you stop in your tracks and helped you to see the world differently in some way, a better way. On this podcast, we create those life-changing moments for you through interviews with some of the world's most profound people around the globe. We explore groundbreaking ideas in health and well-being.
What we're really doing is getting to the root cause of your symptoms. And often we find that that is an emotional block that we have been carrying around in our body that's become almost crystallized and created a physical symptom.
Relationships.
And for women as well, when I talk about respect, it's called respecting yourself, which is don't overgive. Women will tend to put themselves one down, and then wake up at 40 and go, wait a second, I am woman, I deserve respect.
Personal and professional transformation.
This is true of any skill. You only develop it by doing it. And so, if you don't get out there and just start doing it and being a bit rough around the edges at the beginning, you can't work on your craft. And so it can't turn into something.
Spirituality.
Because I think when we know who we really are, we think we're our name and our body and our form and our hair and our clothes and our skin and but when we know who we really are as infinite beings, we're free.
And so much more. So settle in. This might just be a big day for you where you hear something that changes your life in the most transformative way. Hello and welcome back to Things You Can't Unhear. Hope you're doing really well and thank you for pressing play on this episode and for subscribing to the podcast. Now, as you may very well know, it's our mission for you to have those aha moments during this show that can help you to create positive shifts in your life. And today we embark on a transformative journey of healing and self-discovery in a conversation that truly has the power to help you take control of your own health and give you some lifestyle shifts that can create your own optimal health and healing. In this episode, we are joined by Mirella Petrucci, and she's one of the most beautiful souls whose journey is nothing short of inspiring. She's a wellness coach, a sound healing practitioner, a vocalist, and also the host of a brand new podcast on the Guide Your Light network called Well Worth It. Over this conversation, we're going to hear Mirella's story of being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2015 to now celebrating her recovery in 2023, which was nowhere near what she expected. The outstanding pathway it took her to get here is going to be shared across this conversation. And as hard as the past few years have been for Mirella, she now sees her diagnosis of multiple sclerosis as a blessing in disguise. And I urge anyone facing a new health diagnosis or challenge to tune in and listen to what Mirella has to say, because there are such important messages in this conversation that you can truly take away. The wisdom that she's gained in the pursuit of her holistic well-being and healing pathway has been absolutely incredible to see, and now she's sharing it with others. If there is anyone in your life that you believe needs to hear this episode, please be sure to share it with them, because it could be the starting point for a transformative healing journey for them too. Let's jump into this inspiring conversation with Mirella Petrucci. Welcome, Mirella Petrucci, to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Did you hear how excited my voice got when I was introducing you? I am so pumped to have you on. I had the pleasure of meeting you probably about 12 months ago, and you have absolutely fascinated me for that duration of time with the evolution, I suppose, of your voice and what you are on a mission to achieve through sharing your voice. And For everyone listening, Mirella's actually just recently launched her own podcast. It's called Well Worth It, and she's part of the Guide Your Light Network. She's one of our members, and the whole mission behind the Guide Your Light Network is to elevate voices creating change, and you're certainly one of them. That's for sure. So welcome again.
Thank you so much, Maritza. The feeling is mutual. It's been a wonderful journey, and I'm so excited to be here and share more through this platform.
I always refer to you as the most beautiful soul that I've met. And I really want to get people to know your background, because you, I suppose, in the last 8 years have had a huge transformation in the way that you live, due to the fact that you received a diagnosis and, you really took your wellness into your own hands, which I find so inspiring. And from those lessons, you've now been able to help other people. So can you share with us a bit of a background as to how this all started for you, I suppose, and what got you on this wellness pathway?
So back in 2015, I basically woke up one day and I had blurry vision, and I wasn't able to see properly out of one of my eyes. And so at the time, I didn't know what was happening. I sort of rubbed my eye and it didn't go away. And that led me to going to the GP, and they sent me off to an ophthalmologist, which is an eye specialist. I needed to wait for that appointment, and whilst I was waiting, I was really impatient, and I really wanted to know what was happening because my eye was still blurry. And I sent myself off to an optometrist to try and find, what was happening. And they unfortunately couldn't give me an answer. Everything was normal. And so the ophthalmologist appointment came around, and I was diagnosed with optic neuritis, which is inflammation of the optic nerve. And so when I asked the ophthalmologist what that was, they said that it would most likely be caused by multiple sclerosis. I remember walking to the front of the clinic and just falling into my husband's arms and crying, and life as we knew it just was turned upside down. I knew very little about MS. All I really remembered was participating in the MS readathon back at primary school and raising funds for people who lived with disabilities. So it was a very traumatic experience for me. And looking back now, there was a lot of fear that came from that diagnosis, from then going on from the ophthalmologist that then led me to have an MRI, and the specialist then confirmed that I had multiple sclerosis. And so the journey began on how to navigate this new diagnosis that I had been given. And I basically was in so much fear that at the time, I just, did what the ophthalmologist and the specialist was telling me to do. And, I went along to the appointment, and they gave me some disease modifying therapy brochures, and went through a few questions, and, basically asked me whether I smoked, whether I drank alcohol, and whether I wanted to have children. And at that point in time, the first two questions were easy to answer. And then the last question was a bit more difficult. I really didn't understand why they were actually asking that question. I rarely drank alcohol and I didn't smoke cigarettes. And the reason why they were asking the question about the children, the actual medications actually have side effects and could cause defects to the embryo. So I just couldn't believe that I had just received this diagnosis. And at the time I was 31, and my husband and I had just started talking about having a family. And I just couldn't believe that this was going to impact our decision to have a family. Through that journey, I was told by my general practitioner that everything would be okay, and that, it would just be about managing my MS. And to be honest, I didn't really know what that meant. I actually went in for another MRI scan, and I actually had more lesions in my brain. At that point, I realized that managing my MS would mean basically being on a disease modifying therapy or a pharmaceutical drug for the rest of my life. And I was just mortified and horrified by the thought of that, and also by the side effects of these disease modifying therapies. So at the time, I knew, I didn't know much about healing the body. I was in a state of fear and panic, and I experienced panic attacks. And it just got to a point where I was like, I do not want to live my life like this. I do not want to live my life on a medication for the rest of my life. And so that was when I decided to change action and change the path, I should say, make action, take action, and go down a different path. And I decided to start looking at other people's success stories and what other people were doing in the world. And, I just couldn't understand how there could be no cause or cure. And it just didn't make sense to me. And so I went down that path and I came across many different stories. And there was one of Pam Bartha and then Terry Walls and Professor George Jelinek. And at the forefront of these stories was diet. And so I decided that I was going to change my diet. And so that led me down a path of, going down through to a vegan diet, and then that changed to a vegetarian diet as I continued to research. And then it got to a point where I just felt so overwhelmed and I didn't know what to eat and what was best for my body. And so I decided that I wanted to work with somebody. And so the research began around which practitioner I wanted to work with. And I also took the information that I had read from these books and felt into what felt right for me and what I was going to do. And so then that led me to start to work with a naturopath, and that just started my whole wellness journey. And I have learnt so much about my body through that process. I have learnt about just really being in tune with your body. So I was very out of tune with my body. There was many different things that I was experiencing that I thought were normal. And as I said, I thought I was a healthy individual. So that's a little bit about my journey and what led me down my path. And I'm just so excited to be able to show up like this and actually share more about it, because I believe we're not generally educated about the different options. And there are so many different options out there. There are a lot of people suffering. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here to be able to talk about this.
100%. So where are you at now? So that was 8 years ago, and the prognosis, I suppose, was quite dire. You were meant to be on medication for the rest of your life, and lesions were increasing. Where are you at now in your wellness path?
So now I actually consider my diagnosis to be a blessing in disguise, because, as I said, it did lead me down that wellness path, and I did do a lot of work holistically. I was just about to say on my body, but it was actually a holistic approach. I took a holistic approach and an integrative approach, and that led me to a place of recovery. And so now I am on my recovery journey, and my last MRI, yes, it was my last MRI, I actually received my MRI results, and it was the first time I actually had a decrease in my brain lesions. And that was after 8.5 years. And, this is unheard of. This is not something that is generally spoken about. But, I have done the work. I have shown up and I have done what I've had to do to get to this point. And I truly believe, everything that I have implemented and invested in my health and wellness has been well worth it. And that's why, I'm so passionate about sharing this through my podcast. Podcasting is not something that I was planning on doing. But I am, so inspired and so empowered to actually share this with others, because we can get to a place of recovery, and you can do it. The body has the amazing ability to heal. So yeah,
Are you still on medication, Mirella?
I've actually taken myself off medication, and it's probably been a year now. That was a very difficult decision for me to make, because there was a lot of fear about that. Yeah, I was in a place of, I've worked so much on my mindset that I'm in a place where I know my body has the amazing ability to heal. I don't need a medication to be able to continue living life well. But I do say that with caution, and I'm not suggesting to other people out there to come off their medication. I did a program and I educated myself on how to do it safely, and I worked with practitioners in order to do that. And so, I'd just like to share the message that you can come off your medication if that's what you want to do, but you need to do the work behind it. I wouldn't suggest coming off your medication and then not doing anything for your health and wellness. I think that wouldn't be a great idea. So yeah, for me, I'm so grateful to be where I am, and I just love the fact that I get to share this and get to wake up every single day and feel grateful that I'm able to continue this journey.
You do say you've done the work, and I think that is the big key here, is you've done a lot of work over a long period of time. And when you started to work with your practitioners, what do you think, you mentioned diet already, but what do you think were some of the key lifestyle habits, I suppose, that you needed to look at the most?
Yeah.
What were some of the big ones that were sort of, red flashing lights that were like, okay, maybe this was some part of a trigger here. Maybe this is something that we can shift and tweak so that there is a more positive outcome to your diagnosis?
Yeah, look, to begin with, it was diet, definitely diet. As I said, I thought I was a healthy individual, but I did have a lot of processed foods, and I didn't really understand the importance of high quality foods. So for example, grass-fed meats and plant-based, certified organic produce, and the importance of eliminating all these chemicals from our produce and having these really great food and, filtered water. And that was the beginning of the lifestyle change. But then it also was, focusing on my stress hormone levels and practicing yoga. And, I was more of a Zumba and kickboxing kind of girl. And it was making those shifts and recognizing that actually I needed to make a change in order to create change, not only in my body, but in my world, in order for me to be well. And so it was diet, exercise, stress reduction, and a huge one for me was toxin removal. When I say toxin removal, it was, looking at products, and I loved coloring my hair, and, I decided to stop coloring my hair. And I then looked at, what products I was actually putting on my skin and, what ingredients were in those products. And, I was looking for alternatives, what we were using in our home to clean our house, doing those sort of things in terms of toxin removal. But then it was also the toxicities in my body. So, doing the testing around, did I have any heavy metals? Was I exposed to mold? How much exposure did I have to electromagnetic frequencies? And it was also treating myself for parasites and learning how to do enemas and, using oxidizing agents, which is similar to ozone therapy, and removing these things, these toxicities from my body internally as well as externally, and looking at it from a holistic point of view and, implementing one step at a time. So I must say, I was feeling so overwhelmed when I first started my journey. I did a program called the Live Disease Free program with Pam Bartha, and she's my health coach and my mentor, and I've learned so much from her. And I also worked with my naturopath, Fiona Chin, and I also learned so much from her. We used a lot of traditional Chinese medicine tinctures to basically knock back all the bacteria and the silent infections that I had in my body. But then with Pam Bartha, I did a lot of work around enemas and learning how to do an enema at home, or even believing that I had worms. That was a process for me, but it got to a point where I knew by doing these things, and I saw what was coming out of my body, that I knew I was on a path to recovery and to wellness. So those are the main things, but I also truly believe it is a holistic approach. It's also, emotional balance, and it's also rest and making sure you're getting, great quality sleep. Sleep is so important, and also, taking note of our circadian rhythm and going to bed at an earlier time and waking up at an earlier time, and just looking at, what I was actually doing and how that was impacting my health. And I know now that if I don't get 8 hours sleep, it really does affect me. I'm not able to show up every single day and really show up in the way that I want to show up, in the way I want to, be with others and around others. And the other thing was, lifestyle shift is, who I was actually surrounding myself with and what content I was actually watching. And, I know you've mentioned in one of your podcast episodes, you stopped watching the news, and I did the same thing. I stopped watching the news, and it was so amazing that, how much impact that can actually have. And even social media, how much time am I spending on social media, and how am I actually spending my time, and how do I want to spend it? And, being out in nature. And so I think it's I know you mentioned main lifestyle shifts, but I truly believe it is a holistic approach. And, it also is supplementing your body with supplements and plant-based supplements or scientifically backed supplements, because some of us have nutritional deficiencies, and it's also a success mindset. So it is an overall approach, and I have found taking that overall approach and that holistic and integrative approach to have been successful for me. And everybody is different, and I think it's about finding what is that driver for you and what is actually causing you to be imbalanced. So, looking at, what the underlying root causes are. And a majority of the lifestyle changes that I've made, I'm pretty sure there's many more things that I have done along the way, but they're the ones that are coming to me right now.
I really honor you, Mirella, because you have taken this in your own hands. And I think what you've done, which a lot of people in your position start to do, and a lot don't, is they start to question things. So this is where I think we get a bit of control back, when we're like, okay, maybe I won't put that moisturizer on my face before I turn the label around and check what's in it. Maybe I should look up all those chemical names and see what they actually are. Maybe I shouldn't eat that packet of chips before I check how many ingredients are on the back. Maybe I should, and it just goes on. And so it's just, and even the content, like you said, maybe I shouldn't watch this because I don't actually feel very good after I watch it. Or maybe I shouldn't hang out with that person because they make me feel like shit after I leave. Like you said, there's toxins in the form of physical toxins. There's toxins in the form of mental toxins. And there's triggers. There's triggers to illness and disease that I suppose, are what can happen when we get these diagnoses. So this is where, you really inspire me, and I hope a lot of other people listening, is like, what can you do after you get the medical diagnosis or after you get the information from your doctors to, okay, I'm doing every single thing in my power to make sure that I heal from this if I can. And, it is completely inspiring. And just listening to you talk, I'm sure a lot of people are like, wow, she really has done a lot. And you mentioned it sounds overwhelming, and it absolutely would be, especially if you're dealing with the mental toll of hearing and been receiving a diagnosis as well that's quite new and not understanding it. But I think the key that you mentioned was integrating things one at a time. And that's where it becomes a lifestyle shift. So you're not going to go out and just completely integrate all of these things in one day, because you probably will burn out and be completely overwhelmed. But on a slow, gradual basis, then it becomes a lifestyle change, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Everything you've just shared is so true. And I'm nodding my head as you're speaking, because it's so true. It's about asking those questions and then implementing one thing at a time. I'm always talking about it's baby steps. It's baby steps because it is mentally exhausting and it is overwhelming. And even if you haven't received a diagnosis, there are symptoms that you could be experiencing that could be causing that mental exhaustion. And it's about going, okay, where can I start? And, where should I start that feels right for me? So following your intuition and following what your heart says, because sometimes we're told, we're given for example, I've been given a prognosis and, they've told me that, my life might end up in a disability. And so for me, it was like, okay, that's what I've been told, but is that what I want to accept and believe? And, then choosing to believe what you want to believe, or shifting that perspective and shifting that mindset to get to where you want to be. So that's another message that I'd like to share.
taking a quick minute to interrupt this conversation to let you know about something exciting I am growing. As you might know, I'm incredibly passionate about helping people to find and share their voice, especially if their voice is one that aims to create positive change in others. And I've launched a podcast network with purpose. It's called the Guide Your Light Network, that features podcasts and voices that inspire, educate, and transform listeners. And we have a library of podcasts that are part of our network that truly embody that mission, and we're looking for more. If this has sparked interest in you and you are ready to start exploring speaking and using your voice in this way, I'd love for you to check it out. Also, if you have something important to say and you don't know where to start to bring that to life, we can also help you to craft your authentic message through our Guide Your Light online sessions to help you get super clear on your intention, messaging, and structure needed to launch a podcast of your own that is authentically you. Just head over to guideyourlightnetwork.com. Yeah, I think that's really important too. And you touched on also not waiting for the diagnosis. And I think that's a big thing too, because even people listening today who are healthy and thriving as you thought you were as well, you know, there are those things out there that we could be doing to just make sure that our immune system is strong, to make sure those triggers aren't being flared up, to reduce inflammation in the body, to clear out toxins so that disease doesn't occur or is limited, to the most of our ability and control. And, you know, it actually feels good to know that we have some form of control, because when people get unwell, it feels as though control is stripped from you, doesn't it? It feels as though, you know,
Absolutely.
you're at the whim of doctors and the medical system and just being told what's next. And to be able to stand in those shoes and say, hang on a minute, I'm going to try something that I really feel I will benefit from in the long run, that's completely empowering.
Absolutely. And I think that's also challenging in itself. Like, I remember going to the appointments and my husband was by my side every single appointment, because every time I went in, the information went in one ear and out the other. And I was basically sometimes even crying throughout the whole appointment. And yeah, I felt like I had lost complete control, and was so used to being so independent, and I didn't want to lose that independence. So there was that fear around that. But you also mentioned, going back to symptoms. So I'd like to share that, you know, when looking back now and recognizing the symptoms that I had, you know, my body was actually communicating with me. It was my body's language of saying to me, hey, something's going on underneath here and I'm trying to make you listen, but you're not listening. And so, you know, I was experiencing things like bloating and gas and headaches. And, you know, I know a lot of people experience these things and don't think anything of it. I was one of them. I didn't think anything of it. I thought, yeah, it's okay, it's normal. But it actually isn't. You know, it means that there is an imbalance there, and it's definitely worth looking into why that is actually happening. And you know, there could be other things that could be driving that as well. Like there was a lot of things in my childhood or my teenage years that I did, like for example, took antibiotics and took the contraceptive pill and did things like that caused imbalances in my body as well, which I didn't realize at the time. And, you know, I wasn't taking probiotics and I didn't even know what probiotics were, and fermented foods and all these sort of things. So yeah, I think it's very important for people, if you are experiencing symptoms, it is your body's language, and it's a way of that the body is communicating with you.
I think we're all sitting back now going, right, I do experience headaches, or I do experience bloating, and I do experience all of those things. And, you know, I've recently been on this really aware pathway of listening to what's going on in my body, just because I'm curious. And you know, for years I experienced bloating that I just thought was part of my DNA. I don't know. I'm like, yep, this just happens. And I realized after doing a lot of research that I should try and change my diet and see what tweaks I can make. And about a year ago, I removed gluten out of my diet, and guess who doesn't get bloated anymore? Yeah, it's been a huge thing that I always thought about for so long, but I'm not celiac. I don't have an allergy as such, but there's definitely an intolerance there that causes my body to react in a way that isn't its optimal self. So removing that and just going, okay, let's try different things so that these annoying symptoms that spark up all the time can be dealt with before they turn into something bigger. And that's just one example of that. I mean, gluten is unfortunately something that is overly processed at the moment, especially here. So it seems to be triggering a lot of us more so than ever. And, that's one way to easily make a change, I think, is trialing it. I started by trialing it for 3 weeks and I was like, wow, don't I feel so much better? And then, recently I went overseas and you have a little bit of the temptation around all of the food when you're traveling, and started eating a bit of bread and doing all of the usual delicious European pastas and, all of that stuff, and came back. And again, those symptoms just started again. So it was just that true indication of, yep, these are shifts that we can easily make to reduce these symptoms and listen to our bodies, because they're so smart. They're so smart if you actually just give them the time to listen to them.
It is so true. It's so true. And I love the fact that you made that decision. You followed your intuition and thought, I'm going to actually take this out and see how I feel. And, you listen to your body, and it's all about listening to our bodies. And on the flip side of that too, I think it's good that you did have these beautiful meals while you were overseas. I think there is that balance. And, when you get to a place where you are recovering and you are well, you can have a flexible meal now and then, and it's okay to do that. But just knowing that, that's how it actually makes you feel, then it's your choice. Do you actually want to feel like that, or do you not? So, again, it's coming back to being your choice. And yeah, I love that you shared that.
So inspiring hearing what you've done. I know that you are now, you've got so many hats, but you are now very involved in sound healing. And sound healing has become a huge part of your life and in your healing journey. And I've heard you talk about this science, I suppose, behind sound healing. And I've never heard anyone articulate it like this. I've been to many sound healing sessions and sat there in beautiful bliss and heard these instruments being played and just felt so peaceful, but never really understood how it could help us heal. Why in particular is sound healing, that particular modality, I suppose, so important to you, and how did it help you on your pathway?
Thank you for asking this question, because I love speaking about sound. So through my wellness journey, I was open to trying different modalities. And when I was working with my naturopath, Fiona, she suggested trying yoga to reduce my stress hormone levels. And so I did that. And within a 3-month period, going to yoga 2 to 3 times a week, I dramatically reduced my stress hormone levels, which is amazing. But that then led me to explore other workshops that were being offered at retreats and the studio that I was going to. And one of them was sound healing. And I had never heard of that before. And I was like, I experienced a little bit of it at the retreat. And I was like, I'd really love to learn more, because I have a background in singing. And so, I've been singing since the age of 8, and I went along to this sound healing event, and I just couldn't believe how it made me feel. And I was feeling so deeply relaxed and felt these shifts within my body. And I was like, what is happening? I'm like, I don't understand how this is happening. And I just wanted to learn more. And so I decided to enroll myself into a certificate and learn the foundations of sound healing. And through that process, I was reconnected with my voice. And when I began singing, I went to many different teachers, and they would say to me, it's all about connecting to the song you're singing. And I actually found that difficult. I didn't really understand what that meant. And then I came across sound healing and started doing my certificate. And it was through that process that we did vocal toning, and we used sacred sound instruments and that would tune to specific frequencies. And it was through doing that process and doing the vocal toning process that I remembered how much I loved using my voice and loved using toning and frequencies. And it took me in a different direction because singing is all about performing, whereas sound healing is all about feeling and connecting. And it is so non-invasive. You actually don't need to share what you are going through in order to feel the benefits of it. So for me, that landed me in a place where, I was doing this sound healing certificate and it was for myself, and I was learning about the different instruments and different frequencies and how it impacted the body. But then at the same time, I got called to actually sharing this with others. And so I started to offer sound healing events as a fundraiser. And I wanted to raise some funds for MS research. And so through that process, that led me to doing these sound baths, and I was getting such amazing feedback from the people that were coming along to these sound healing events. And so the reason why sound healing is so powerful is because the human body is made up of approximately 75 to 90% of water, and sound travels 5 times faster through water than in air. So I like to give the example that if you envision a glass of water placed near a speaker and the sound emits from that speaker, so the sound goes into the water and then you see a ripple effect on top of the water. I'm not sure if you've seen that before, but it's also the study of cymatics. And that is literally what happens to our bodies. So when we're using the specific sound instruments, these frequencies are going into our cells and they're actually resetting our cells, and it's going into the areas of imbalance and then bringing them back into balance, into the natural vibration that they would naturally want to vibrate out. So then you're bringing the body back into harmony as well. And so that's called sympathetic resonance. And then you've also got the brainwave entrainment side of things, so which is a law of physics, and it's in training, 2 or more rhythmical cycles to become synchronized. And so, when the brain is presented with this and a repeating stimulus, it actually starts to stimulate the body. And for example, if you're using a drum and you have the drum beat and you're drumming along at a consistent pace, your body actually begins to rhythmically go into that cycle of that state and bring you back into balance. And so it is very, very powerful. And there's also frequency following response. So using specific frequencies associated with positive well-being. So for example, that 4 to 8 hertz, which is that theta brainwave, you can use these specific frequencies to bring your body back into that really relaxed state and that sleep and meditative state. And so this is really beneficial for anyone who's experiencing stress or anxiety or insomnia. And so, sound healing has been used for thousands of years by many different cultures. And, it is used to deeply relax the body and alleviate chronic stress in the body. It also is used to release suppressed emotions and completely harmonize and balance the body. So that's why I choose sound healing, and that's why I love sharing it with others. I also love really offering beautiful experiences. So if you've ever come along to one of my sound healing events, I do love using beautiful lanterns and candles and creating beautiful spaces for people to come along and really just let go and take in all the healing vibrations, because I think that's important in itself, to actually take the time for yourself and really allow yourself to heal. Because when we're actually in this state, when we get into a state and we get into the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest response, the body begins to heal and repair itself. And I just personally think that's so amazing, and I love sharing it. And I also love the fact that I'm also healing my own body whilst I'm sharing it with others.
I just listened to you and I think, wow, this has all come from getting a diagnosis, isn't it? Isn't it incredible what you have done as a result of hearing that diagnosis? And it's probably why you call it a blessing in disguise. It's been an absolute blessing for you, I suppose, in a purpose pathway type of way. And I can feel it. It's only the tip of the iceberg of the impact that you're making on so many other people's lives, and the way that they feel and the way that they heal, and the way that they take control of their own health, and their life and their energy and their surroundings. And, the list goes on. Was I suppose you've taken a spiritual pathway a bit as well, in the way that you view things. Were you a spiritual person before your diagnosis? And would you call yourself one now?
That's a really great question, because I have asked myself this before, because I actually didn't understand what spiritual meant. So before my diagnosis, no, I wouldn't say I wasn't very in tune with my body. I don't know whether I'd call myself a spiritual person now, but I do know that I do connect with my heart, and I follow my heart, and I see that as my soul. And I don't know if that's considered spiritual or not, but for me, when I'm connecting from this place and I'm tuning into what my heart is saying and going with that, regardless of what others are sharing, or I guess what I'm trying to say there is, I think it's very natural to feel judged by others. But for me, I know on my journey, I just shut all that out. I didn't think about that at all. And I really just felt into what I wanted to do and what lit me up and who I wanted to surround myself with. And that has led me to where I am today. And I feel so grateful for that. And I have goosebumps just
do I.
having this conversation with you. So I'm really, really thankful, and I'm grateful for this opportunity, Maritza, because I think when you follow your heart, which I think, you do as well, and I love what you do. And I think that's why and how we connected, which is, very interesting. I actually don't know how that sort of came across that path, but I remember coming across your work and seeing what you do, and the fact that you had this podcast network and the Guide Your Light network, and I wasn't intending to go down that path, as I said, but I feel so grateful to have met you and to be able to have this conversation with you today.
Well, tell us about the podcast a little bit, because it is called Well Worth It, and you explained so beautifully why it was called that, and I love the name so much. But on there, you have had the people that have helped you so far, and it's actually so interesting to listen to. I've learned so much from it, and I thought I was pretty well educated in this type of stuff. And there's, so much to take away from every single episode. So talk to us about who you've had on and what the plans are.
Yeah, I'd love to share. So my mission now is to empower, inspire, and teach others how to reclaim their health and take control of their health. And so the idea behind the podcast was to actually invite the people who I've actually worked with and that are part of my network and that have helped me get to the place where I am today, and allow them to share their stories on how they got to the place they were, but also share my journey through that process. And so I have had my beautiful mentor and health coach, Pam Bartha, who lives in Canada, and she is the founder of the Live Disease Free Academy. And it was just such a pleasure to talk to her. I've also had my beautiful naturopath, Fiona Chin. And, I worked with Fiona for 4 years, and it was so great to speak to her as well and just share what I learned from her. And I have recently had my dear friend Kira from Oshan Yoga, and she has been instrumental in my, yoga journey and also in wellness and recovery coaching. And it's just been it's been really beautiful to be able to have conversations with these people. And I'm looking forward to having more conversations and purposeful conversations around, what I have learned and their experiences and where they've come from and what led them to the place that they are. So it's been a beautiful journey, and I've received wonderful feedback. I've had a lot of people reach out in regards to the podcast and share how each episode has impacted them. And I feel so grateful grateful for that. I'm doing it because I just want to share. And if I can get into the ears of at least one person and help them shift their perspective, or, help them, work with their mindset, or just let them know that there are other options in order to help you heal, that is just amazing. Going through other people's success stories, but then also sharing your own, is so important, and you can create so much impact in a positive way. And so I think that's really needed now as well. As I said, there are a lot of people suffering and people just don't know where to start. And it's about listening to different podcasts. I love your podcast, Maritza, and I love, listening to all the conversations you have as well. So yeah, it's really just, sharing from the heart.
I shared one of your episodes out into my community on social media recently, and I think it was the episode with Pam, because I was just blown away by it. There was so much information in that, especially for people who are diagnosed with MS. And yeah, a few people did reach out, and I've sent them on to you, because they were in that position of having someone in their lives, or themselves being diagnosed, and being absolutely grounded by the information and not knowing what to do. So you are changing more than one life already. Keep going what you're doing. We're here to back you up every step of the way. We're so glad you're thriving. We're so glad your wellness journey is just, going so well. And we're so proud of everything you've done to date. You're definitely one to watch, and I can't wait to see where this all goes.
Oh, thank you so much, Maritza. I really appreciate your support and the team behind you as well. And I love being part of the Guide Your Light network. Yeah, it's just been a beautiful journey, and I just love being in this space. So thank you so, so much.
Now, I'm not going to let you go without asking this question, and I'm sure you know what it is by now, based on the name of the podcast and based on the fact that you listen to the podcast, which is awesome. But what is something in your life that you heard once? You read it, you were told it, it was a conversation, whatever it was, that you could not unhear, and that really made you stand up and go, oh my goodness, I need to do something with this.
So can I break the rules and give you two?
Yes, you can.
So there was two. I was like, well, I really want to share two. Okay, so the first one I have already said, but I am going to share it again, because it was when my naturopath Fiona said to me, your body has the amazing ability to heal. And when I heard that, it changed my mindset and changed my perspective and led me down a different path. And I think that is so important to know and understand, that the body does have the amazing ability to heal, and no matter what anybody tells you. And the other thing was I heard Pam Bartha say, so my health coach and mentor, she said, if we worm our dogs and our cats and our animals, why wouldn't we worm ourselves as humans? And I was like, oh my goodness, that just makes so much sense. Why don't we worm ourselves, and why aren't we taught this? And that is something that stuck with me and led me to learning how to do enemas and seeing these worms coming out of my body. So yeah, those are the two things that really resonated with me and that I'd love to share with others. And, the choice is always yours. That's three.
Enema is the only... So interesting. Enema is the only way in which you can worm. What's the best way?
So there are parasite protocols. So you can use herbs depending, everybody's so different, and everybody has different imbalances in the body. So there are parasite protocols, there are herbs that you can use, there's oxidizing agents, there's ozone therapy. You can also go and do a colonic that will definitely help with parasites. There's many different things that you can do to eliminate these things from your body. But again, everyone is so individual. So, I generally believe that we should all be doing parasite protocols. And I also generally believe that we should also be detoxing our bodies throughout the year, especially every quarter. And if you've never done a detox, actually do a functional medicine detox, which is like a 21-day detox, and then do one every quarter, because, our bodies we should be treating them as a temple. And, it is so important to make conscious decisions every single day in order to keep yourself well and optimal and live a long and healthy life.
What amazing last words for the episode. Mirella, thank you so very much for everything that you've shared today. There's obviously so much information still to come out of you that we could only touch on across this 45 minutes or 60 minutes that we're sharing. And that's why you've got your podcast, so we can keep learning from you, and especially as you continue to learn. So I'll pop links to Well Worth It so people can follow your incredible show, and I suppose reach out to you directly if they want more information on anything you've talked about. Are you open to that?
Absolutely. Yes, I love having conversations with anyone who would like to explore further. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, amazing.
Thank you.
What great support. Thank you again, Mirella, for being part of this conversation, and good luck going forward with everything that you do.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the show. What did you think? And what did you feel? Let us know by leaving me a message on the Things You Can't Unhear Instagram community page. And if you can, give us some ratings love on your favourite listening platform.